So, welcome to another episode of the weekly snooker podcast, the Talking Balls podcast. I'm your host, Michael Wright, Righto74, and I'll let my co-host come in.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lee. Really looking forward to hearing Noel today. Should be a really interesting chat.
And our guest, as Lee's mentioned, just bringing us in a little bit there is, I'm going to let Noel talk about himself, but I encounter Noel as a mind coach, but I'm sure Noel will tell us more about what that means. But Noel Flannery is our guest today.
So, a performance coach, I'd say.
A performance coach. All right. Well, tell us about that then, Noel, if you would. So, what does that mean then, and what kind of what have you been doing? I know that you're not only snooker, you've got quite a rich background, both as a sports person as well as going into coaching. Yeah. Would you just tell us a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I started off, I kind of coach from three aspects. So, I think like sports psychology is obviously fantastic and great for many players and works really well. But I think there's things in life that we kind of learn out of a book. Like, I mean, nobody could possibly understand what it's like to go through life's trials and tribulations, from divorces to losing a good friend to knowing what it's like to be the man in the arena, or the lady, obviously, playing sport at elite level. I mean, you can't possibly comprehend what that's like just by reading about it in a book.
Yeah.
And obviously, like on the mechanical side, for you, like all the players, like you go to a mechanical coach and they're all obviously very accomplished tennis, golfers, snooker players, etc. Makes sense, right? I mean, you're not going to go and learn how to play snooker off of somebody who read about it in a book, but can you play themselves? That would be mad. But yet, in the mind side of things, I feel that's exactly what happens. Because like I say, there's a lot of. It's not that they kind of help them, of course they can, but it's like my kind of USP, if you like, is I've been there firsthand. So like when I was a young man, many years ago, I was a racing driver, and so I was fortunate enough to, after winning 2 Scottish titles, to go on and win 3 British ones.
Wow!
And I realised that the game, as it is, and it doesn't matter if it's county level snooker or club tennis, club golf, whatever, doesn't even matter. The game's about one thing. The game is about turning up at the event with an advantage over the field. Because if you tick that box, now life is really easy to be confident. And you can tick that box in a number of different ways, in terms of, obviously life's a lot harder to do that then, but this being, late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s, part of my route to turn up with an advantage over the field was, that I might have whittled down a field of 200 guys, maybe 10 of them matched me physically in terms of my training and stuff, and my application and stuff. But, how do I offset myself from those 10? And my idea at the time was to sports psychology. So I buried myself in books and stuff at the time, which at the time was a very unusual thing to do. But that gave me an edge. And so like when I turned up at an event, how can I be nervous or stressed about this? It's like, you're not being arrogant, but it's like, I've got an advantage here, and I know I've got an advantage here. Second's going to be a very, very bad day for me. So you're kind of putting yourself in a position to win. So, I pass on to the players that I look after in various sports this kind of methodology. And then, obviously, like I'm a mind coach, and I learned that. I worked in Florida for many years, and I learned. I put myself in a mind, and it happened kind of quite by accident. Obviously, it was always a subject of interest to me, but I ended up kind of quite by accident doing this over years. But it was my tutor was he worked with players in tour golf in the States. So he did some certification programs, which I did over a number of years, and we became good friends, and we were kind of hung out every weekend when I was in Florida. So it was done specifically in golf, but as soon as I started to do it, I thought, snooker would be fantastic for this, because to me, snooker is definitely one of the more challenging ones mentally. I mean, they're all challenging mentally, every sport, but I think, that, missing and going back to your table and watching your opponent play the table, it's quite challenging. That's going to be quite difficult. So I always thought, this would be a good fit for snooker. And then the last kind of part of how our coach is, because I worked, so motor racing is full of failed racing drivers, like this guy. So like my career and my driving career in racing, is nothing unusual, because, most of the paddock has been a rally driver or whatever in the past.
Right.
So I basically kind of went up through the ranks over the years, and then, they spent the last kind of 10, 12 years, not so much recent years, but, working as a manager. Obviously, where you're working and managing elite sport, and I've gone on to win British, European, American, and world titles as a manager. And racing is very cutting edge in terms of how things are done. So you've got like spacecraft, airline industry, race car industry. This is where the standards are set in terms of how things are done. Procedurally, analysing failure, learning from that. Like, you imagine like an aircraft going down, because everybody's seen these shows where, aircraft investigation, and they show you this is like the realms of what goes into it, and it'll be, from how the plane was looked after, flight manifests, personalised airline stewardesses, what the pilot's been eating for the last week, every single nut and bolt that's on that plane is catwalked and logged. Now, if you think about analysing how that's analysed so that they can learn from the failure and then make sure it doesn't happen again, which is something that definitely doesn't happen in other industries, medical industry being a classic example. So lots of blue chip companies and Great Ormond Street Hospital and stuff embed people in Formula One teams, for example, to learn about processes and how things are done. So if you think about, like that plane going down and analysing what wrong and what can get done better, if you apply that to a sport, where does that put you? So I'm very much doing that. So like I say to these guys offline, the glamours, the World Championship snooker, I got back at 2 a.m. from Barnsley, having sat through Stuart Carrington's match, my player, and made loads of notes. And then this morning I'm up at the crack and doing a spreadsheet on every single parameter, from safety exchanges, one pot successes, etc. And we go through all of that, and I can post something on your page, an example of that. So going through all of that and then writing a written report, and then obviously like another phone call as we spoke last night on the way home, and then again today, and we're just like, this was great. This is what went really well. This is what we need to do better, because if we come up against in the next round Ronnie or Neil Robertson that you had on, for example, then obviously we're going to be potentially in trouble. So, it's kind of just offsetting that, but it's like understanding like the basics and the fundamentals. So say, no necessarily curves, I kind of go into specifics with Stuart, but say you've got a player who's, like not, like we need to score heavier when we get to the table. Even though like I have like astonishingly poor skill set in playing snooker, I think my highest break's like 8. And it's about reverse engineering. Why does a break come to an end? And inevitably players will say it's because they missed the pot. But really, the issue is they were out of position and the pot became too difficult, and that's why the pot became missing. So it's all actually reverse engineering it, going back and back and back and back and back. It's about cue ball control. And so like when you've got an issue, be it scoring, like we would look at it in a kind of bit of a different manner and understand actually at the core what's the issue. And that poor cue ball control might not necessarily be something mechanical. It could be something about how they were feeling during the course of the match.
Maybe pressure or
Exactly, and all that. So, and it's about kind of like going into everything and those kind of little details, because like the performance comes from, you know, millions of little things done well. So that's kind of generally like my background and what I do.
That's really helpful, Noel. And maybe at points you'll be able to bring parallels with some of the other bits you've done around the goalkeeper coaching and the golfing, and you know. But I guess, I mean, we've had a number of guests now, Lee, haven't we? And it's odd, isn't it? Because in a sense, they're all capable of beating each other. They're all capable of hitting a century break. So in theory, every player on the tour can beat the top player. It's then about, well, what divides you then? What is it that's different? Because you're all capable of beating each other. It's not like a football team who are in League Two against the top team in the Premier League. They're not going to beat the Premier League team unless you get a lucky one off. But these players can all beat each other. So there's something going on, isn't there, from the practice table to the tournament, whatever, and it's not simple. But I think you're right, Noel, aren't you? There is something around the mental approach, the life around them. You know, you're not kind of clean and pure when you get to the table. You bring stuff with you, don't you?
No, for sure. But like you say, it's a very kind of expansive kind of question to that, you know, and answer. But there's just so many kind of small bits to that. But some of them will be very small incremental gains with one player, but for another player, it'll be, you know, completely fundamental, you know, with that. I would say like the first kind of most obvious answer to that would be, I always say to players, especially when I start working with initially, be it in any sport, I can't do anything with your APOS game. It won't be any better. It won't be any better, because like, say we've got a long red and we've got to get position on the black, right? Now, you give me, you know, a couple of months and 3,000 goes at that long red, right? I will get it in the pocket and we'll be sat on the bench, right? So my best shot is exactly the same as Ronnie's or, you know, or Robertson's or anybody else, you know, Mark King, etc. You know, so the end result, and that's the same for every sport, you know, because every amateur golfer is, you know, most of them have had a hole in one, or they've chipped in from the side of the green, or sunk in the wrong part. So the best stuff is exactly the same as the tour pros, as anybody else. So we can't. That's why we can't do anything with that. But what we can do is for a player to learn about themselves and understand why they have good days and why they have bad days. And if a player's on his day, then you're right. Any one of them can beat each other. But you know, this is why, like, you know, we play. Our goal is not to win the game, because you're not in control of that.
Yeah.
Atmospheric conditions. You certainly didn't build the table. You didn't put the cloth on. Cue dust, you know, etc., kicks, etc., you know, all these things. But the biggest thing we're not in control of is your opponent having the game of his life. Because if he does that, if he has the best, or one of the best games he ever has, you're going down, you're going home.
Yeah. So Noel, would you say that you're giving the players the tools to recognise sort of when they're failing, so that they can do something about it? Are you giving them the tools? So at that moment, they can recognise, oh, this is what I was told, this is where I'm going wrong, and then they could maybe take it from there themselves. Yeah,
for sure. So we always speak about, you know, that the job is not to win the game, and weirdly, you know, you've got a black on the spot. The job's not to put the ball in the hole, because you're not in control of that. You could get a kick, or anything could happen, right? So why would you make the task in hand something that we can't control? The task in hand is process. And so like in that process, they'll have processes in hand for every single situation in the game. So taking a long pot, you know, they might be doing something different with their breathing or their thought process, you know, because they're slowing things down, for example. You know, in the other shots, it's much more kind of more flowing. They're sat and they've got a process for that. They're sat back in their seat and they're hurting from missing. They've got a process to deal with that. There's always a plan in place, and it's about, so they've got that. So and we're putting them in a position to feel good. because, and really that's what we're chasing. It's nothing more complicated than that. Like when we met, half an hour ago, it's Lee, how is it? How are you? Michael, it's the same. We're everybody on the planet, in Chinese, Mandarin, Malaysian, whatever, everybody greets each other the same way. And there's a reason why that happens. And it's because as humans, it's feelings, it's feeling good. That's what we're after. It's not a fleet of Lamborghinis. It's not £1 million in the bank. It's not a house with 20 bathrooms.
Although that helps.
It's the feelings that those things give us. That's what we're after.
Yeah.
So ultimately, it's about, a player in any sport being in charge of their own well-being. Because the second, we're 3 frames down and, and that situation is then in charge of you.
Yeah.
Not the other way about. For those 3 frames that you're down, you might have did, a couple of bake-offs, and that's it.
And of course, if you're sitting in the seat, and you've had a bit of a bad run, you can actually lose the match in the seat.
Of course.
Because it just keeps getting worse and worse. Even when you're sitting there, not at the table, you're still, your thoughts are just losing you the match.
Yeah, exactly. And really, although, it's a perfectly kind of understandable human emotion to be upset, especially when you missed, a relatively easy shot, be it an amateur or professional. But in that moment, we are choosing to not play better. We are choosing to put energy into hurting and being upset about the past.
Yeah.
And part of the process is the past is irrelevant. The future and what this ball means, be it winning the frame, winning the match, winning the world championship, that's completely irrelevant as well, right? It's all about this moment. And if you watch the Taylor Davis final, with just understanding that sentence, you then start to understand what was going on and why it went wrong, because they're missing perfectly easy shots for guys with those skill sets, but they're leaking energy into the future. Partly because they're really tired. It's 2 a.m. or something crazy.
Yeah, well after midnight.
Right, well after midnight, and they're probably not the best place for food and water and all the rest of it, and they're just terrified of failure, and we get anxious about things that are going to happen in the future. We worry about things that happen in the future, know what's happening right now in this moment. So it's about them being disciplined and keeping with this process. Process.
Would that be a lack of focus?
Yeah, I mean, it can be, but it's as I'm kind of showing them, like an illustration of using the table all the time is I can just get 5 reds, and so we'll keep it as fingers at this moment. So we've got this amount of focus, and that's it. Period. So if we're hurting because we just won the last frame, that's that one gone, because we've got one on now hurting. Well, then really didn't want to lose this frame, and very scared about this black because we're going to miss that. So you might lose 2 of them, and now we're only taking the shot, having to be careful how my fingers go down here. This is why I use balls. So and then you end up only taking. You then only got, because you're so upset about the past and the future, you've then only got two balls of focus left to take the shot. So the discipline thing comes in. I'm forever, got various kind of analogies, but one of my favourites is a Michelin-starred chef. I've got a friend who's one, and that guy has got that Michelin star not just because he's an amazing chef. Obviously, he is. He doesn't do pie and beans like I do, but he's amazing because he's disciplined. Because he gets that plate of food, and it might be 1 in 10, and he knows it's not right.
Yeah,
there's something wrong. So that gets pushed to one side because that doesn't leave the kitchen, and that's why he's got his Michelin star.
Right.
He never knows when the inspector's going to be out there.
Yeah.
And obviously, why would he want somebody eating something substandard? You know, that's just no amazing. So, and it's exactly the same with the players. So inevitably, they'll go down into a shot and there'll be a cameraman or somebody's moved in the crowd or a bad feeling or a bit of anxiousness or something's amiss.
Yeah.
You know, the other players crunch a water bottle by mistake, you know, whatever it is. And they've got to have the discipline to reset and not pull the pin on that shot.
Yeah.
Because don't pull the pin till everything, we've got all 5 balls on the task in hand.
Yeah.
So that is a very challenging bit for them. Very challenging. I see this in all sports. Like I went out with a tour. I've got 2 guys in tour golf, and I went and played with them. And Marie gave me like a stroke a hole, and I still get beat out anyway. You know, but I went and played around with them, and it was interesting. I remember talking to them in the 18th, and not once did they step out of a shot. They went up to every shot, pulled the pin, and there's absolutely no way everything was in a line through every single shot. Yeah. So again, it's a very difficult thing for them to learn to do. You know,
yeah, I suppose that's the importance of a pre-shot routine and sort of any like, especially a still ball sport. You know.
Yes.
Yeah, pre-shot routines, I think, is probably everything. You know.
Yeah, and you know, Noel, just that, you know, thinking. I mean, it'd be really, you know, how much you want to say about it in depth, but it'd be interesting to know, you know, it sounds like there's a lot of data, there's a lot of information, the spreadsheets, you're doing a lot of analysis. Are you also finding out at certain junctures when things happen, good and bad for them in the game? You know, what were you thinking at that time? What was going through, you know, how much do you go into them analysing and looking back and reflecting on how they felt at different points in the match?
Yeah, no, of course. But I think like part of that is it's very challenging to begin with for them, you know, like when they're very early in the process, because, you know, it's interesting. It's like, ask any elite sportsman on the planet, what's the thing to be good at above all else? And it's sawing here. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
And yet every elite sportsman on the planet has had tens and tens of thousands of hours of mechanical practice.
Yeah.
And sometimes zero or very little practice on the mental side of the game. Isn't that mad? I mean, it's crazy. The whole thing is backwards.
So what would you say the ratio, you know, as a percentage is from like complete talent to what's in the head? What would you say the percentage is?
Yeah, I mean, the talent bit's a little bit, I'm not a fan of talent. I think it's just skill set. I think people are just really skilled. You know, and kind of learned that from a young age. But both are as vital as the other. And I would say, but there's just such a skills gulf. So, like in terms of, can go back to the earlier question, it's like you know, like a really good amateur player. Let's say that he's in sixth form at high school, skill set wise, right? And, you know, and then obviously like I'm in primary school because I'm a horrible player at snooker, right? And then the professionals up in university. But all of them like on the mental side of things, I wouldn't say, you know, like they're all in primary school. I can't do anything like remotely kind of complicated. And nor would I really want to with them, because they're still very much learning. So in terms of like what you're saying there, part of that learning process is in order for us to look into like what went wrong there and how were you feeling in that moment, they've never paid any attention to that.
Yeah.
Right. So they haven't got any skills in that process, you know, and it'd be the same with you guys. You know, it's like, you know, really, it's like we notice the extremes of how we feel. You know, amazingly happy. You know, really upset. Somebody's just drove in the side of my car, etc. You know, but the bits in between. You know, because like how we feel, like each shot is a mirror image of how you felt in that moment. So if you feel, say, 7 out of 10, you'll get a 7 out of 10 result.
Yeah.
And getting a 7 out of 10 result in a one pot is going to mean the ball's not going in the pocket.
Yeah.
You have to feel really, really confident and amazing over that shot in order to execute something really, really hard. So the first process is, like initially, is getting a player to even be aware of where they're at.
Right.
And then when they're aware, then they can convey that to me. And then we work on giving them tools, like you mentioned, Lee, in terms of how to fix that. And those tools could be, and Mark won't mind me telling you this, Mark King, but Mark, we have a tool that we use where he's got a little black sausage dog called Noah. Sorry, called Dougie. Dougie, I was talking to Noah earlier today, sorry.
All right.
But,
you don't just know lots of sausage dogs.
He's got a little black sausage dog called Dougie, and he's got 5 dogs, and Dougie's his favourite, right? And I'm due that dog a treat because he is like amazing, right? So anybody who's into dogs can kind of understand this, where it's like, so he'll kind of have his happy place. So if there's something really stressful, he doesn't feel kind of too good, or he's just lost a frame on the black or whatever, he can go in a kind of meditative like state in his seat, thinking about Dougie, because he's done exercises to top this up. And those exercises would be like lying on the couch at home, Dougie's on his chest, smelling that, and anybody who's got a dog gets this. How powerful that is. And so, like, how can you be stressed when you're thinking about that?
No, that's brilliant.
You can. So like, we can't be wet and dry at the same time. It's never about, you need to stop being anxious. That's not the fix. We're replacing anxious with something that feels good. And then we've taken all of that away. And the confidence it gives you when you've got those kind of skill sets, and that you can just put stuff to one side really easily like that, and that's really powerful alone, but yeah, it's just a lot of things like that.
Wow, that's a good one. Lee, what are you going to cuddle up to that you can remember when you're sat in your chair?
I'd rather not say.
You might have to borrow a sausage dog, perhaps.
I
mean that's really interesting, isn't it? Because it's that bit, I guess, around. I mean, one of the things we've had with some guests is that they're starting to talk about their diet as well, and certainly we talked, didn't we, about John Higgins when he won the, he got the 147 in his first frame in the British Open, and then was talking all about how he'd just been doing so much fitness work over the close season, and you think, well, there's obviously the physical bit, but surely something about that is, you're feeling quite good about yourself, aren't you, in a sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've done a few of these guys, and I tell you what, I always kind of feel I come off, and players and friends have come to me like, you did it again. You've given away too much. It's so fun, and I really don't mind. But but you're absolutely right. I mean, like, inevitably, like I'm working in football, the standard's really high. They've got a lot of people, a lot of money. They're not analysing things. There's experts in various different fields. The players getting help, and I think things are really good. In other sports I've worked in, world darts, world snooker, golf, things are much lower standard. So although I'm not by any means a sports nutritionist, so that I do help them with these things, because these things are very, very important. And even just as me and Lee have been doing a good job, and we've been drinking some water during the course of this, this is very vital. So in terms of like focus, and you guys should do this in the amateur game, right, when you're just playing in your league matches, because you start to understand now, hopefully 5 minutes from now, you'll understand why some days you're on and some days you're not.
Right.
And part of the reason for that is alcohol can teach us a good lesson with this, because when we have one too many sherbets, right, we wake up in the morning and you try focusing on something when you've got a hangover, it's kind of quite challenging, right? Even digesting a sentence that's getting said to you. Never mind doing some long pots of that, So the reason you're struggling is because obviously alcohol dehydrates you further than you would be normally. And, we're 50% water as adults, 60% when we're kids. And because of gravity, because unless you're stood upside down, which generally doesn't pan out too well, but very challenging for snooker. But if you're stood upright, because of gravity, obviously, like this pint glass, I mean, if it's so empty, it's going to be empty at the top, right? You know, and so it's just imagine it like, I mean, it's in a simplistic form, you know, like when we're hungover, dehydrated, the water level's here and this bit's dry. And so our brain sits in fluid, and your cognitive output, your ability to focus is profoundly affected by your hydration. And so in life, we eat and drink because we're thirsty and hungry. In sport, we need to eat and drink for performance. So it's about the players kind of understanding that. And now they start on a daily basis, whether they're playing or not, they start hydrating themselves properly. Because obviously, like, there's immeasurable health benefits, you know, from weight loss to, you know, how you know, cell regeneration, etc., etc. So you know, it's a very, very powerful thing, you know, and crudely, you know, that's measured by, we go to the toilet and there's our pee clear. Simply. You know, you know, it's although like you can get away with your pee being slightly yellow, but it's a hard thing to gauge. How do you gauge slightly yellow? So it's much easier to gauge it's clear. As a measurement, that's easy. And if it's not clear, then we catch up with fluids. And obviously, you know, during the course of a match, they're monitoring this, and they'll learn to pay attention to that because they know that this is really important. And when they discover this, they're really like, how did I play before? Because the difference it makes, it's like
game changer.
immeasurable. And it's really? Like, how did I even hit the ball before? You know, it's absolutely, and it's exactly the same with your blood sugar. So obviously, like, you know, if we have a meal and our blood sugar's at the top of the screen here, and obviously the second we stop eating, that's only heading down south. And we've got to be like up, you know, in the upper regions. So we want that graph to be like this, not like that. That's no good. So, like, you know, we're having to eat for a few hours, throw a Mars bar and a Coke in you. We get a sugar spike, but obviously there has to be a massive drop at the other side. And your performance will follow that graph, you know, like massively. So like, it's about, you know, like, and we're very anal with things. Sometimes, like, we're tweaking meal times before a match by 15 minutes.
Really?
So we'll eat, you know, a good meal before a match, and then we're grazing throughout the match. So you can always tell my players have got a banana or something on the table. Right. Other guys don't. But none of the other World Snooker players will be watching this, so they'll know.
Well, we hope they are.
Just need to mute this because I've made them better.
Yeah.
And how long do you tend to work with these guys? I mean, I'm guessing it's down to them to a large degree. But I mean, so you've got at the moment active players. You've got Mark, you've got Lee Walker, Stuart Carrington.
Yeah, those three just now. Yeah.
So how long would you tend to work? You know, what on average would you, you know?
It just depends on what's kind of coming up. I mean, obviously, you know, like in the summer break there, you know, I mean, you know, we might just see each other kind of once a month, but, you know, when they run up to the Worlds last time, you know, like I've seen them all every week. So I'm traveling, like, to see Mark in Essex or Lee in Wales. You know, I'm living in Scotland, you know, like I'm traveling to there. You know, all the time to do that. And obviously, like in worlds, and, you know, in elite sport generally, it kind of works where, you know, like financially, it you know, there's no for lessons and stuff like there would be for an amateur. You know, it's all just done on performance. You know, so I cut of the take. You know, so you know, but it's kind of usually most months. It's minimum, you know, 2 or 3 times a month. You know, it's kind of generally that, you know, and we'll spend a day with them, and you know, I'll be picking balls out for them. But on the table, I've learned, you know, what, 2 and a bit years now in World Snooker, you know, like I've learned we actually do less and less on the table now.
Right.
Like really, I mean, it didn't really need much help there. It's dealing with errors and learning from failures and kind of steering them down a kind of performance path. That's more the key bit, and obviously different things work for kind of different people. But I kind of studied. It's lots of little things done really well, and I've studied for years about like I'm learning off people who look after Olympic athletes and stuff about sleeping patterns and how that's done. Definitely not going to give that away, but there's a lot we do with sleep.
Right.
It very much depends on what the tournament is. The sleep is done differently, but it's just one of the things like we might. How often have we all in life been to a hotel and you've had a rotten night's sleep just purely because the pillows are rubbish, for example?
Yeah.
Right. So they take their own pillows. They take pillows off their own bed. They take them to the ring. So now we've got a little game, and it's just another little thing to feel good about as well.
Like a home comfort.
Sorry?
Like a home comfort.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, for sure. Especially the bigger tournaments. We might be in Sheffield for a few weeks. And for those, obviously, I'm very used to it. But for those, it can be quite challenging. Being away from home and all the rest of it. We want to make it as pleasant as possible. But it's not beyond the realms. I mean, I got a phone call at 3 a.m. because one of them can't sleep before the game, and it's absolutely fine. There's no problem. We'll sit and chat and watch the same episode of Family Guy on YouTube together or something, and it's like off to bed. But that's the job. It's like whatever it can take. I don't get to every tournament, but I try. I try to get as many as I can, and obviously, was there in a very empty arena last night.
Yeah, and I guess those guys you're working with, Noel, they've all got different needs. Specific to them. Client to client, it's going to be vastly different, I suppose.
Yeah. No, it is. We're just different people, aren't we? I mean, we all like different things in the menu. We all buy different clothes and because we're dealing with people's personalities, and it's all about the relationship, and it's like it's got to be really tight, and I would count as sure it's the same for them. All three players, we're more friends, and that's how I want it to be. You're just a coaching day is like I'm just hanging out with my pal today, and he's picking balls at the table.
Yeah.
And we're just having some fun with it because unless if it's fun, if it's difficult and hard work and a grind, nobody's best stuff is there.
Yeah,
it's got to be fun, and typically, over say a 5-hour practice session, a player, and it's the same in a match, a player might play their absolutely A+ game, might be in total an hour during that day. Because it's just such a small one. Everything's got to be in a line. And if it's just we're having maybe snacks so well this morning and it's getting towards lunchtime, then the performance will just start coming south, and you're like, right, what's wrong? Right, okay, it's 12:30. Yeah, that's it, we're stopping for lunch. Let's have some lunch. Then we come back and we're bang on it again. We're absolutely, it's such a fine. It's like walking along a tightrope, to get the best stuff out of them. It's always the same. But that's okay. But it's more just about can they get through in their B game? Is their B game enough to make the job happen? And Stuart played really solidly last night. And we played some solid stuff during the rest of that. And that was enough. Because that's part of what we work on. If A+ game isn't there, it's all right. Our B game is probably enough to get a job done.
And I suppose it's very rare that the A game's there anyway. I think most players will be getting through in their B game, and sometimes the B game.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I mean, it's just trying to make it not drop into C&D game.
Yeah.
But they need to monitor themselves with that. So we have like a job list that we call it. Is a very kind of simple one in terms of if the performance is dropping, there's something in job list wrong. So we keep it simple, and that'll be hydration, food. And then the last bit is space, feel how we feel, and like I say, I don't mind giving away the food and the water bit too much because it's the last bit that's the most challenging. And that's very personal to them. So it's at minimum, if I'm not at the match, I'll be watching it on TV, taking notes and doing some data for every shot, write a report. Obviously, we'll speak immediately after. So they come out of the arena with their phones attached to their head, so that I'm getting totally up to minute, exactly how they're feeling in that moment. And if they're upset, I want to hear that. It's good, because that helps me help them. But it's like a team sport, really, and the three of them are quite close. They really hate meeting each other. Like we and Mark played together in Leicester, and they were both, oh God, this is just awful. It's so bad. Yeah. It's like Liverpool A playing, Liverpool B, or it's just, no, this is horrid. But I suppose it's just what's going to happen. Hopefully as time goes on, and things progress further on, and get more players, and obviously, if I end up 7 or 8 players, that's going to happen a lot.
Yeah. And are you looking at it in terms of, obviously there's some kind of management companies almost, or people who style themselves as management companies for players. Is that almost part of the approach? This could become a stable of players who kind of work with you in terms of, even beyond the performance coaching side of things. Because I noticed on Facebook you were helping with Stuart with advertising and sponsorship, just encouraging and trying to help with the wider aspects.
Oh, for sure, and I do everything I can. I do a little bit. Some of my football work is with through a football management agency, so I look after some of their players, and the Premiership and stuff, and it's through that, then they had some access to some sponsors and stuff, so I was able to kind of recently kind of put that through to them, and hey, something might happen or something might not happen. But in terms of of course, social media and stuff, I can help them with that. But it's certainly not, a management side of things. No, it's purely just, it's everything to do with performance that isn't mechanical. Yeah. Because like I say, I am horrible at pool, never mind. So it's I've got nothing to give. There's no winning anything for me. Of course, but it is quite hilarious. If we play a match together, what happens to me? I get to break off. Making balls at the table. What's the point of playing a match? I was doing that all day anyway.
Yeah. And you touched on the other sports, Noel, as well. Do you find some of the other sports harder to coach, or some harder than others to coach?
Because I was a racing driver before, I've kind of dropped into that. I do look after a couple of racing drivers, and one of them, a girl, she's on the fringe F1, and I help her, and it's only because she's a family friend, really.
Right.
I could do a lot more with racing drivers, but racing drivers are really challenging. There's a lot of ego there. Racing drivers, and they all think they're just absolutely amazing. And if they're slow, then it can't be them. I think people in other sports are much more willing to put their hand up. But it's amazing how things have kind of moved on. In terms of even just looking at stats, what Davis did obviously was incredible. Absolutely amazing. But it's not everything by any means, but it's a kind of good indicator. If you go through centuries, he's on 360 odd like career centuries,
Wow.
right? Which is incredible, right?
Yeah.
But Ronnie's on over 1,000 right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
That's untrue, isn't it?
So other sports like cycling, running, football even, because the technology's come on. Obviously, the technology kind of moves on. But snooker, I mean, it's always been a bed of sweeps and green felt in it. It wasn't much the same. And, okay, maybe cues are slightly different. Maybe the tips have moved on a little bit and chalk, etc. But really, but the technology has helped. It's not so much technology, it's more coaching has changed. And now the guys are getting taught better, so the standard's just going up and up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
In terms of the help. But that's not to say, I mean, I personally think, I was talking to a friend of this the other day, I think Steve, because he was a very dedicated, no stone left unturned kind of guy, I think he would have done many world titles at this level as well. His level would just have gone up if he was, a lot younger, and he was playing now. But I think, the result for him would have been the same. Not for some others, but the result was the same. But it's interesting because I say, obviously, of course, the 100-meter runners are faster. They're eating way better now, and the shoes and the training facilities, etc. Of course, they're faster. Of course, how could they not be? With technology, but snooker's pretty static. In terms of
So you must see a big opening then. I guess that's almost where we're coming to, isn't it? You must see quite a big opening there for the kind of support you can give to players, because I guess it's largely untapped, generally.
No, I mean, I think I'm just doing something a little bit differently. I mean, I certainly wouldn't, for 1 second, God say it's better. I've got the, greatest of respect. I was talking to Steve Feeney beefy last night. For the likes of Steve Feeney and Chris Henry. I mean, obviously those two win the world title every year.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's astonishing, what they've done, what they've achieved. And of course, 10 years from now or whatever, I'd love to be emulating them. But it's certainly, I think, and there's some other coaches as well, but I think, I've got a bit of, just like Steve's got his kind of USB with his site, right, which is fantastic. And then, and Chris as well, just amazing that he can do the mechanicals and the mind side of things. He's got his kind of individual way of doing it, which is obviously, God, plainly working that he had both finalists last year. But mine's is different as well. It's just a different take, from the motor industry, from the race car industry, side of things, and I've been a competitor at the highest level. And it's not sports psychology, so it's something different again. It's much more about emotions and how we feel, and it's much more simplistic. Very palatable, easy, not difficult to understand, childlike. And I don't like it being, kind of complicated. So it's a different take again. And I suppose, time will tell, but it's, Stuart's obviously earlier in his career. And I think, Stuart is just, just tremendously exciting. We've only been with him the last 3 or 4 months, but, the guy made a semi-final last year in Gibraltar, and, he's just a fantastic player. So I can definitely see us, getting a result. Some big results this year, and then obviously, then you maybe start getting a bit more interest and stuff. But I never wanted to do one sport. I'm quite happy. I understand why Chris and Steve, just generally stick to snooker. Obviously, Steve does some darts and stuff as well. But I always wanted to do a number of different sports. So maybe that will mean I'm not able to reach their levels in the future. I don't know.
Fascinating. I don't know about you, Lee. I mean, you obviously appreciate it more from a playing point, and I know you like your stats and data. So this must be very exciting for you to hear, isn't it?
Well, I actually feel that I feel obliged to send Noel a check. I think a little bit too much. I think I'll be a better player. I'll probably listen to this again and be a better player for it. So thanks, Noel.
No, thank you. Yeah, stats are good. Q tracker is amazing. It is amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah.
It is good. But I went into that because I'm definitely not going to tell you what it is, but I'll tell you when we're shut down this.
Yeah.
I'll explain to you what it is, and you'll be quite blown away. But in golf, that there was generally for the tour guys, because they're so close, there's a magic stat where if they become world number one in this stat, then they will be absolutely up there in the first 2 or 3 in the rankings by being just world number one in one stat, one of the 100.
Oh.
Because generally, unless they're spraying it into the trees, and they didn't have to be the longest off the tee, etc., they become world number one, and it's putts 6 foot and in.
Wow.
So they get to they drop more of those from 6 foot and in than any other player. Really, the rest of the game just has to be, obviously, it'll be at a great standard, but they didn't have to be like even in the top 50 in driving distance or any of it. That's the magic stat.
So it's like driving for show and putting for dough.
Yes, exactly. Obviously, coming from a golfing background, I was looking for this magic number in snooker because I knew it had to exist.
Yeah.
It had to be something that was the thing to be good at. And so our practice revolves around this one thing. With all the players, because they can see, because I've sat them down and shown them all the numbers. Yep, you're absolutely right. That if we're amazing at that, then we're just incredibly hard to beat.
Well, I'm gonna leave this on a cliffhanger then. So I'm gonna leave this now for the listening and the watching viewers and listeners. I want them to go away and have a think about what that might be. So we're gonna say goodbye to them, and we're gonna say thanks to you, Noel, but we're gonna hang on because we want to know more. So really, for the purpose of the podcast, thanks very much. I think you've given us a very, very different insight into how you can impact the performance of players, very different to anyone that we've done before, really. And it's been really interesting. I think you'd agree, Lee?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks very much. It's been a fascinating chat. And as Michael said, something different to what we've been doing. It's been great. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. That's awesome. Thanks. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks,
Noel.